Okay, shall we call the meeting to order with a roll call, please, town clerk?
Chair Evers,
Present.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Drysdale,
Present.
Commissioner Scott,
Present.
and Commissioner Cram.
Present.
We have minutes to approve. Would someone like to make a motion as reviewed the minutes for approval or for discussion?
I move for approval of the minutes of 2/28/24.
Do we have a second for approval? Commissioner Graham seconds. Is this a vote? Use your little buttons.
Down here too.
Yeah. All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh, it's unanimous. Very good. Okay, approval of minutes passes. Item 3 on our agenda is swear in new PCBC commissioners Ted Elson and Eve now. Eve?
So should we start with Commissioner Elson?
Sure.
If you can raise your right hand. So I, and then state your name,
I, Ted Elson,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and faithfully perform the duties of the office
faithfully perform the duties of the office
of Planning Community Development Commission,
of Planning Community Development Commission,
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to this.
I, and then state your name,
Eva,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and faithfully perform the duties
and faithfully perform the duties
of the office Commissioner of Planning and Community Development Commission,
of the office of Commissioner of Planning and Community Development Commission,
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Feels very heavy. You're like, what did I just swear? Next order of business is audience business. Looks like we have an audience member. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Cameron.
Is it appropriate for each of them to just introduce themselves and why, they wanted to join this commission?
Yeah, we've done that with others. Oh, okay, good idea. Well, we'll do that now before audience business. Thanks for suggesting it. We'll go backwards. Commissioner Knapp, would you like to introduce yourself to the board and a little about yourself, whatever you think we need to know?
I have been in Lyons for almost 2 years now, and to join my partner, Lee Williams, is in the audience. But most recently, I worked as an affordable housing development coordinator for the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless in Denver. So working a lot with 100 unit, 200 unit, light tech projects. Awesome.
That's great. Cool.
Yeah.
Ted Elson, I've been here, in Lyons since 2019. I'm just previously a trustee on the board, and I was looking to join this commission to try and learn what else I can learn about the town, so that's it.
Great. Well, very good. I've learned a lot since I've started being on it. It's amazing. There's no end to it. Any questions for the new members before we move to audience business? Okay, audience business. Lee, thanks for your patience.
Of course.
And I think during audience business, you would state your name and address for the record before you get into your business.
Lee Williams with 600 Indian Lookout Road, and I'm working on a development project at the former 317 Evans. And that's 9 new addresses, but we still think of it as 317. What I thought I might do, partly at Andrew's suggestion, is give some thoughts about how that development, the Evans development, relates to a topic that you'll take up later this evening, I think, or might consider taking up, which is the creation of a mechanism to amend PUDs. When we developed 317 Evans, brought before this commission and before the board of trustees, you might recall that we created a PUDR, a PUD residential, and there was some discussion about whether we even needed a new category that would be residential affordable. This is an affordable project, but at the time we didn't have that option and residential suited us just fine. Let me be clear that I'm not applying for a change to our PUD at this time. I'm just giving some thoughts about how 317 Evans might illustrate how an amendment process might work or might be helpful. We finished construction for the most part, with maybe an exception or two, about a month ago. And at some point, if the commission would like, I'll give a full debrief on the project. Maybe once it's absolutely complete and we begin to lease up, I think we'll have more lessons by then, but I'm happy to do it anytime it would be helpful to the commission. In the meantime, having mostly finished that construction, we hired a surveyor and we did some of the checking that we would do toward the end of a project. And we realized that we had two diversions from the original PUD. One was that the buildings were placed a little further south than they had been drawn or approved. And the other is that the parking lot had been built a little higher than had been drawn and approved. Those may ultimately result in our asking for amendments to the PUD or for changes to the PUD, whether you think of them as amendments or the creation of a new PUD that is consistent with those new conditions. The building being pushed further south has a couple of implications. One is it expands the setback in the front. People on Evans love that, but it squeezes the setback to the rear, to the alley, and then to the Dr. Bob property behind. So one of the changes that we will ultimately have to reconcile with the PUD one way or another is that setback needing to be reduced, setback requirement needing to be reduced. Or if the commission or the trustees or staff decide not to reduce the setback, then we'll have to physically change some of the things on the property. We would have to move buildings that are now in their foundations. The other implication of this survey, the finding of the survey, was the parking lot was a little high. And a high parking lot connected to those buildings by a ramp has inherent in it the difficulty of, if we drop it, undermining the ADA accessibility given the slope of that ramp. We drop the parking lot, ramp gets more steep, then we have compliance problem in the ADA promises that we've made people who would be in the fourplex on the property. So implication there is that we had to sort that out somehow. Our recommendation to staff was that we, instead of designating a parking space in the rear at the end of that ramp as an ADA parking space, instead we designate a space in the front. So not changing the number of parking spaces, not changing the configuration of the parking spaces, just changing signage from the rear to the front. So how does all that relate to the PUD amendment process? We have two changes then. One is changing a 13 to a 10, so that we can change the setback from 13 feet to 10 or 9, depending on whether we want to give ourselves just a little buffer, maybe a buffer we should have thought of earlier, and changing the south designation of the parking space to north. It's literally the change of one number in one word. Now, under current mechanisms, we would have to file an all-new PUD application. And we presume that the commission and staff and the trustees would look favorably on that application, but obviously putting together an application, taking up the time of the commissioners, the trustees, the staff for a full review seems like maybe more than we need to change a number in a word. So it would be a lot of work for us. It'd be a lot of work for our engineers, architects, surveyors, printers, and for all of the town representatives. Under what I think is the proposed process of creating an amendment, we would have a reduced package that still would be some work for us and still would require that engineers and architects and surveyors and printers get involved to create a shallower package that would mostly be reviewed by staff. So Andrew and the colleagues that he works with up and down the chain would all look at that, but it probably would not, depending on what process you decide is appropriate, come to the commission or go to the trustees. So less work for the town, more or less the same amount of work for us, maybe a little less. What I would ask the commission to consider is to think as it goes through, as you all go through the process of designing that mechanism, how to make it as simple as possible. So the simplest that my naive imagination could conjure is there's a letter agreement between the developer and the town that says, we decided to change the setback and we decided to move the parking space designation. That may be too simple, but that's the sort of holy grail of simplicity. And I would just ask, as you begin to construct all of the details of how an amendment process might work and what we might have to take on, or what staff might have to take on, or what you might take on, that you, as one of your objectives, along with prudence, along with all of the others that you need to consider, look for simplicity, look for efficiency, which in my mind is one of the reasons that you might be creating this amendment process in the first place. And with that, I'll leave you to this with one invitation, and that is that many of you along the way have helped make this thing happen, and I thought you might want to see it. So later tonight, we'll send an invitation out to the trustees, to the Health, Housing and Human Services Commission, to staff who have worked on this project, and to members of this commission. So if you have some time on Sunday evening or Monday evening and just want to stop by and look at it, it'd be great. We won't have an application before any of those bodies. So I think we will not run afoul of any formalities, but I know people will just be curious about where we stand. And especially if we're talking about some things moving around, maybe the parking lot coming down, just seeing what we're talking about there might be useful, even if that's not ultimately a decision that would sit before any of these bodies. So thank you. Have a good evening. I'll stay for that discussion with the papers.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question? Is it allowed?
Usually don't during audience business. So if it's something we could discuss that's related, but when we get to that topic later, that's all good. But if not, we can, okay. We break protocol too, so. Is there any other audience business? I do see potentially another guest on Zoom. Okay. We'll assume not, and we'll move into item number 5 on the agenda, staff updates. Andrew, I assume that's your territory.
Yes, sir. So, not really much in the world of updating. As far as kind of things that are coming to you all, last, I guess, Monday before last, we got a new PUD application for Riverbend, Chris Lee's project. Much like the public comment, this is not a new PUD, it's an amendment of the existing PUD, but since we don't have that process, we're gonna go through it as if it's a new PUD. So I'll be meeting with him tomorrow. We'll be wrapping up, making sure it's a complete packet, and you all will get a staff report from me, but it won't be until the meeting on the 13th. So we've got some time, but just as a, now that we have an active application, and it will go into a public hearing, just wanted to give note, if you get questions from the applicant or someone else, we just need to kind of keep those conversations at a minimum. So that would be great. And then as far as the Peak Regional Housing, whatever we're gonna call it, authority, right now, again, we got awarded that grant for $104,000 to a feasibility study for our own, unique housing authority between us, Nederland, Allen's Park will be involved. Award if they need any services, and perhaps all the way to Idaho Springs. So kind of that whole corridor wants to kind of join in on this. Really the only thing that you all will see come before you, we'll be drafting, I don't know if it will be an MOU or what it will look like, but it's just going to be kind of formal. The Board of Trustees, I think in February, voted to support and allocate funds to the grant. But this will be just another step to formalize a commitment to this feasibility study to show NOAA, and kind of our partners that Lions is serious, and just like Nederland will provide, that everybody just understands where we are. As part of that process, we will have, it will be pretty public engagement heavy, just because this is an important topic. We'll have a few localized meetings here in our community, and then we'll have perhaps one or two large regional discussions where everybody kind of comes together. So hopefully we can get a good product out. And then lastly, and we'll talk about the area-wide plan for brownfields here in a bit, but do want to cover, I met with Stantec, and I can't ever remember the Colorado agency. But at any rate, we'll be putting together kind of a letter and some sort of public engagement for engaging private property owners to start seeing if we can do some of these assessments around town. One is being carried on right now, Town Hall. You know, the goal is to start linking these together for this area-wide plan. We have an idea of where they are, but to kind of back that up with actual methodology and science. But so that's kind of where we are. So, you know, sometime in the following months, we'll have a letter go out, and then hopefully maybe use this meeting as an opportunity for the public to come and kind of talk. I don't expect you all to talk about brownfield stuff, but we'll have Stantec reps here, CDPDHE, what, I can't.
CDP.
Okay. We will have their representatives here as well, to talk about, you know, what this is and how it can benefit our property owners here in town, and we'll kind of kick it off. So Cortez is winning right now. They've done more. They're keeping up with Longmont, so they've done more than we have in Firestone as well. And then as far as kind of legislative updates, I'll give, it's the end of the month, so I'll give at our first meeting of next month, I'll bring up another spreadsheet, kind of go over what kind of housing bills we're looking at, and see kind of how we react. And the only work that we will need to do before July 1st, but I'd like to get it done sooner rather than later. We have to just scrap the definition of family out of our code, and that'll have to go through this board and then 2 readings, even though it's being mandated by the state. So, you know, if we get public comment, you know, our hands are tied, so we can't really do much. But again, what that bill does is, you know, some of these large homes now can have, you know, a lot of people. Yeah, so, you know, I think if, you know, 6-bedroom home, you can have, you know, 4 different families if you really wanted to, if people want to live together and share common areas.
Is that a House bill?
It passed, it came from the House, it was signed by the governor just about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's been on the loop. I'll look it up.
So I'll, hold on, I can give it to you.
Oh, I didn't mean to pause. I can Google it.
Okay, yeah, no worries, that's what I was gonna do, so. But yeah, it was signed by Governor Polis a few weeks ago, and like I said, this will be kind of the first of many to come in the world of housing. And our community is just big enough to where we're gonna hit kind of the benchmark of meeting the criteria for the state, so. But that's the way it goes. So that is the end of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can you, remind me with that occupancy bill, is there some kind of limit based on anything, like number of people per bedroom or
So
something like that?
yeah, the only wiggle room that we have local control, it has to be a fire, public health and safety issue. I advocate that Lyons isn't the first municipality to draft what that means, because it's somewhat ambiguous right now. So we'll again scrap the language, and then we'll wait and see what other kind of municipalities start to do, because there will be, everybody will lose it, and then there will be a slow kind of crawl back to figure out what that public health and safety means. So, but right now, that's it. It's pretty ambiguous. And, you know, we don't have, you know, we have, how many people, we can have 75 people in this room. We don't have that built into our residential code. So it'll be a challenge, you know, to kind of figure out what that magic number is. So. Any other questions? All right. Go ahead.
Okay, item 6 is Board of Trustees updates. I'm assuming since Mayor Rogan isn't here that we won't have a Board of Trustees update. Does that sound right?
Yeah, she was unable to attend tonight, but she'll be here.
Okay. That sounds fine. Then item 7 is our review of the PCDC recommendation of the Board of Trustees on the Stantec proposed work plan for the area-wide plan. And I assume, Andrew, you'll walk us through that.
Yeah, so when I brought this to you all, at the last meeting, let me pull it up real quick.
And actually, before we get going, I should ask, apologies, is this as formal as a public hearing where we would motion for a recommendation and then discuss?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so just for new commissioner members, you know, Andrew will present kind of a staff review of what we're about to do, and then one of us will motion to recommend or not recommend, and then we can discuss it before we vote on whether that recommendation goes forward. That makes sense. So like basically just hold questions until there's a motion. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. Of course, I
You
have.
can talk more if you need, just like.
No, it's coming up
For a
right
while.
now. We are live and am I able to share my screen? Let's see. Don't know why it won't come up. Just a second. My apologies. Thought I had it up. All right, so we went over this at the last meeting, but I'll just go over it very quickly. Oh, no, that's the wrong attachment. Let's see. Just a second. So again, as part of the kind of full package for brownfields, we have kind of a two-pronged approach. We have individual site investigation and assessment. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
That's the PUD one.
Oh, that's weird. I'm just not good at this. Hold on. Stop share.
No one said you weren't good at it, and there's just
Share screen.
room for improvement.
Just so many windows open, you know, I understand.
That's it.
There's the one.
All right.
When,
Everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is, our kind of partner planner from Stantec is, Rhonda Bell, and she has provided a work plan. So, we have identified, this area and I have modified that. So, Commissioner Drost, that you had mentioned at the last meeting that it just does not go with you when you. So we just share whatever screen. Hold on, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, please.
How did we identify a need for this type of project? And then did we ask for proposals, or how do we identify this prospective partner?
Great question. I'm hoping Andrew will go over it because I have the same question.
Sure. So Stantec is the consultant for the state. So the monies come from EPA and then through CDPD.
CDPHE.
See that.
It's Colorado's environment. I've been really long to other states.
Colorado Health is what I'm gonna call them from this point onward. So there's not an RFQ or a bid process for this. They are, so the money again comes down from EPA, and larger municipalities were provided the opportunity to apply for these funds. It's $2 million. But there was a stipulation that, in the city of Longmont receive that grant and that funding. But then there was a stipulation that they had to bring on another smaller community. So they brought on Town of Lyons, but then they also brought on Firestone and Cortez, which we've joked about a few times because Cortez is way out of here, but the other two small towns makes sense. So we met with Stantec and Colorado Health. About, I don't know, I've only been here 3 months, and not more than 2 months ago. And they kind of gave us a reminder that we had these funds to use, and it's a use it or lose it. And so we're going after both this area-wide plan, which is really a small area plan for kind of most planning realms. And then brownfield. And so this just, the map that we're viewing at outside of the red to the west is what initial discussions with Planner Kemet had. He originally also went up to the water tower, but we wanted to kind of focus on our downtown core because we do need kind of a localized plan for our downtown core. And what this plan is for is to identify environmental issues, brownfields, but then really lay out a plan to be able to capitalize on urban infill and redevelopment of these properties, and not just brownfield properties, but any property within this study area. And kind of initial discussions that we had with Stantec was that we would like to focus, again, for the purposes of this plan, we wanted to focus on kind of economic development, housing, bike and pedestrian, and kind of sidewalk infrastructure to try to really revitalize and revamp that area of town. So that's kind of what this work plan focuses on. And if you have any more questions about it, but those are the boundaries. And then I have sent her that revision in red. So we will add that into the study area as well. But if there's any other area that you would all like to see, we also had discussions to have one done on the eastern corridor, just because we need planning there as well. So we just prioritized this one since it's in downtown, and we don't really have that an updated kind of infill plan for downtown. So it just seemed to fit, and then hopefully if we can get this one done and wrapped up, and we work through the process, then we'll immediately put in a work plan for the eastern corridor.
We can ask clarifying questions about your presentation. So is the EPA funding paying for the area-wide plan, or is Town Alliance paying for it?
There's no money coming from the Town of Lyons. It is all 100% funded by this grant, and there's no matching funds or anything. In fact, all of the time that I talk about this, I can charge back to the EPA. So
Get many free grants like this.
So I'll be going,
It's a way to bring in smaller communities, because smaller communities usually can't afford these types of, I think, studies. Or it's hard for, I think that's where it's going, that's why they make those stipulations, because, yeah.
So is an area-wide plan one of the steps in the process of utilizing the EPA funds?
Yep.
Okay. I used to be on the advisory board, so I've never heard of this.
Okay.
It's news to me. Commissioner, Tri-Staff.
Andrew, could you go over the way that businesses will be involved, notified, involved? You know, anything that they may have to accept or do, and how the findings will be kept confidential if they are, and will there be any source of funding for findings? In other words, if they find some issue like asbestos or something, will there be any help in getting funding for mitigation?
yeah, so this is outside of the area. So there's kind of two prongs to this funding. You have the area-wide plan, which is just a planning document. So it won't have any findings of brownfields within it. It'll just say there are brownfields in this area, and this is a way to start. And it also will set up and give ideas for the town of different funding mechanisms. To answer your question, I think it would be really valuable when we have those staff. I can't really answer the questions of confidentiality. I don't know that process. I do know, and this is from multiple meetings, that it is confidential. The information is owned by the applicant. It doesn't go into any federal database or anything like that. And it's supposed to be an asset and not a liability, and it's completely optional, so anybody that wants to do it can, and anybody that knows they may or may not have an old, gas tank on their property, they can, continue to look away, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that would be really valuable when we do have that first meeting with both staff from Stantec and Colorado Health to kind of answer those more in-depth details, just because I don't want to provide any inaccurate answers.
I was really pleased that you had mentioned that one of the objectives of those early meetings is to describe the benefits for the businesses.
Yeah, and the area-wide plan truly should be a benefit. It's just a small area plan of how to revitalize that area. I do know, I met with them today, and hopefully I will know more. I'll be going to Colorado Brownfields Conference in Arvada next Wednesday. So hopefully I'll know more about this. But yeah, both the assessments and the plan should be a pretty good asset to the community.
Was the inventory taken by Stantec in late 2023 taken for the purpose of qualifying our town for this grant, or why was that done then?
So we already qualified just because we were brought in by the city. So even if we only had 2, brownfields, which I think they had a good feeling just because we had our own electric utility that ran diesel for many, many years. We had a train turnaround here in the park. We have, old industry.
Little gas station up there.
Yeah. I think they had a pretty good idea. And, we're an older town, older community. So I think they had a pretty good idea that once they got here, it wouldn't be hard to make those findings. But I've asked and haven't gotten it, but at least their working map of their hotspots that they were looking at. But when we initially decided on this area, this was kind of a hub of a lot of those brownfields.
I have that database of the original
Okay.
scratch. Let me share it with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Yeah, but their original assessment was part of that EPA funding, so it was just something that they did that we agreed to because we didn't have to pay for it, and it was just pointing information.
And Cemex is not part of it.
No.
Yeah.
Eastern Quarter, the Eastern Quarter was, but we're just not concentrating on that here.
Well, they did an assessment, like a scatter plot of all these brownfields, and they kind of gave them a rating of how brownfieldy they were.
Yeah. How bad they were, how.
But they were clustered around the center of town, so that's why we're doing an area-wide plan,
Okay.
from how I understand it, at least Andrew.
You're okay, okay. I just remember you had mentioned the Eastern Quarter too, as a separate topic, but that's not, I know that's not what we're doing. But-
Yeah, no, we can't do 2 running at the same time.
Yeah.
That's fair to the other. But there's nothing barring us from getting this one done, and if there's still funding, trying to tackle the Eastern Corridor.
Any other questions for staff before we ask for a motion and discuss as a board?
I mean, I guess just, I know we don't know what we don't know, but if there's a really bad brownfield where the train turned around, this plan could lead to like a really big dig up a bunch of bad stuff. Right?
Again, the area-wide plan isn't an assessment piece.
disruptive.
So that would come with an assessment. So, I mean, they were digging core samples in this office over here. But again, the town's not gonna be forced, to address those issues, well, you know, if it is a safety issue, you know, or a respiratory issue for staff, we probably should, you know, look at it and how to fix it. But there's, again, we can ask, you know, Stantec, but I don't see that occurring as if they run a core sample, they dig up the whole park.
If I may ask a clarifying question on top of it, this recommendation is just for the area-wide plan.
That's correct.
There's two prongs. There are all the assessments which are over here.
Yep,
And then there's this mini master plan called an area-wide
That's it.
plan, and that's all we're talking about.
that's correct. Just the area wide plan.
Is the intention, you think, we have a master plan so that if any sites are identified as needing redevelopment or work done to them, we now have a master plan for them to exist in?
Yeah, and it'll outline future grants and funding, you know, ways to try to start redeveloping those properties. But it's my understanding that the assessments do not occur within the area-wide plan. It's just a plan to redevelop these areas. So the assessment piece should have come before, but we're running in tandem.
So the funding's coming from the EPA, but ultimately what we'll end up with, if we choose to do this, is like a development plan for the town of Lyons, which goes beyond environmental considerations. It's just what businesses do we want to see downtown, and
That's correct.
interesting.
Questions? Any other questions? Clarifying?
Yeah, so, and I'll just read this. Potential outcomes of this AWP study could include recommendations relating to zoning/land use refinements, potential locations for a new town hall, and again, that's just because this was a utility. Infill development, pedestrian bicycle infrastructure, and housing. Notable objectives are to identify preferred and potential land uses in urban form, identify enhancements to the existing street network, define properties with near-term redevelopment potential, define strategies to entice investment and redevelopment activities in the focus area. So it really is just how to revitalize town.
So just to be clear, the town will be presented with a plan, right? With the findings that for the plan. The town then can accept that plan, they can act on it, they can accept the plan and let it sit on a shelf. They could not accept the plan, they could table it, they could do any of those things. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct. Yeah, this will be a micro comprehensive plan. It'll follow much of the same process, public engagement. You know, that on page 3 through the last page, 3 and 4 kind of outlines their proposed tasks. But I already have asked that we be very involved, you know, staff, the community, and the elected board and you all kind of throughout this process, because they can, you know, if they know kind of our priorities, they can do it very quickly. But, you know, in order to get the most bang for our buck, and especially since it's free, having a pretty robust conversation is kind of my goal.
Okay, just to drill down a little bit, you mentioned the comp plan. The comp plan is directive,
Sure.
not binding.
Yeah,
This would be neither binding nor directive,
Yeah,
really.
purely
We
advisory.
don't have to consult it in order to take another step in housing or
yeah,
something.
that's correct. Yeah, in no way when we have a development proposal downtown, will this board or the elected, the board of trustees have to make a consistency statement with, you know, whatever plan we get out of this process.
Yeah, and I think that for the businesses, that will be an important message, and it's kind of a nuanced message, that it is valuable. It will be valuable for them, but does not tie our hands, in fact.
Sure.
At a point. So that's the reason for continuing the
Sure.
question.
Very good.
So are we ready for
We're ready for a motion. If someone wants to motion to recommend to the board of trustees the proposed work plan, do we have language for that, or is it just? whatever we come up with.
Yeah, I didn't provide I did not know which way y'all were gonna go, so my apologies. It does need to say with the map amendment that, that was brought up at the last meeting, but yeah, however you wanna word it, it's just fine, or if you want me to write one, I can.
It's safe and Barney.
I move to recommend that the Stantec CDPHE Lions Planning project for an area-wide plan relating to brownfield be recommended to the Board of Trustees with the amendment to the map as previously stated, which engages the west side of Fifth Avenue. That should do it.
Sounds good to me. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All right, we can discuss internally if we want. If there's anything that anyone has any reservations or concerns before we put to vote, now would be the time.
I just don't have enough familiarity with the comprehensive plan, but it's a comprehensive plan, so how does this supplement it? It already has a lot of information about what we should do in specific areas around town.
Yeah, what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you just asked clarification from Planner Bowen, is that this is not a binding plan or directive like the comprehensive plan was.
Mhm.
So at a later date, we could accept this plan as non-binding, non-directive, and we could adopt it into our comprehensive plan, but that would be a separate step in the future that we'd have to take and all agree on and vote on. So this is really just something that Stantec will hand us. We'll look at it at the end. We'll either decide to adopt it or not after some input along the way with staff and us.
And it won't take a lot of time
Oh,
on
probably
our end
will.
or time. So I guess that's what it's, so we have all of this great information in the comprehensive plan. We'll spend a lot of time putting this together. What additional supplemental detail could this provide to that, to build upon it?
Yeah. So, comprehensive plan is comprehensive. And so this is an approach to kind of really dial into urban infill and redevelopment of downtown and to identify, areas where we can improve either, how our code is written, if we're stifling, good development through some land use code that is, barring that. Or, if we do a walk audit and it's decided that there's just a really bad looking corner or a bad view shed or something that the town needs to focus on and we need to adopt, some landscape standards or something. So it's just to kind of dial into just that area in particular, whereas the comprehensive plan takes, it's detailed, but it's a broad approach to the community's development.
My impression is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the real one is the brownfields piece. And that this other planning is, okay, it's there, but it's not the driver. But it will provide more detailed information in the comp plan. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's.
Okay.
I mean, one thing that's interesting from my perspective is just the wide array of different kinds of sidewalks and buttons to cross the street and different kind of painted walks and different places where there are furniture and aren't furniture, some that in DOT standards, some don't, lighting's kind of different. I see this plan as a chance for somebody, a second opinion on how we're developing our downtown to say you could do it in a way that it all kind of speaks the same language. And we may not like it and we don't have to like it and approve it when it's done, but I kind of see it as an opportunity to have like some people who are experts at planning and small scale infrastructure for a downtown to give us an opinion on what it could be. So I'm kind of excited about it personally. But I think Barney's point about, not wanting to drum up some kind of unwanted panic around the town forcing people to do stuff, like that could be easily misunderstood. So it's a delicate matter too.
And this will go once, and again, we had 3 new trustees seated, so I kind of didn't pump the brakes, but on the mixed use development code. This, hopefully, we can run these in tandem and we can really focus in on how those can work together. So hopefully by the end of this process, we've got a code that's kind of followed and ready at the end as well. And, you know, and this is, you know, take this with a grain of salt, but it's not very often you just get free, you know, planning grant money passed down. That doesn't take a lot of staff time and won't take a lot of community time. So we will get out of it what we put into it. And, you know, it can be very bare bones and it can just be something that sits on the shelf, but I would prefer the former, is that we really use it to really look at having serious conversations about downtown.
It's hard to know, based on this really brief work plan, how many meetings are required. Was that kind of covered in some discussion with Stantec? Like, is this a dozen meetings? Is it 25 meetings? Is it 3 town meetings and 6 staff meetings and 2 commission meetings?
That's a lot of meetings.
To Commissioner Nath's point though, but I mean, when we did our comprehensive plan, it was a very intense.
Sure,
process.
yeah.
We needed an intense process too, if we invited the intensity of it.
Yeah, so they're looking at 4 virtual meetings. I've already pushed back at most. I only want to have 2 virtual and 2 in person, just because I don't like planning on the virtual space. So that'll be kind of our community engagement. During the process, I'll probably meet with Stantec team, you know, once a week, just to go over scope and where we are. And I would say, you know, you all up until the point where, you know, right before we have a community meeting, it'll be just coasting in between those points. And then we'll have kind of an update of where we are, kind of what we need to do as a town, and then we'll do that meeting, and then we'll follow that process. And then, of course, there'll be, you know, kind of the heavy lift from you all will be, once we have probably 75% written, I'll ask for a draft and we'll start doing the review of it. So that'll be the real time. But again, you know, depending on how long it is, some of them are pretty short, that I've seen from, you know, 20 pages to 75 pages. They're not huge documents. They can be, but I doubt ours will be that big.
Commissioner Krim?
What's the communication plan around this? Like, is Kim involved? And, because I've just, you know, it's been discussed, I think there could be some nervousness.
Sure.
You know, I lived in that area. Like, I feel like, wait, what's going on? And is this gonna affect my house? And what if they find something? And
Sure. Yeah, so again, that'll be what that first meeting is about, is we will invite everybody in town, but especially everybody within the subject area. Really go over what the plan is for, you know, kind of take care of any of those worries, if there are worries. But again, I can try to help with that messaging, but kind of the technical, you know, if we find something on a property or something, that will need to come from Stantec or Colorado Public Health. So as far as what does that communications plan look like, I can certainly get that in the works, and we can have that formalized before this starts as well.
yeah, I think maybe some like basic Q&A,
Sure.
just something
FAQ.
to,
Like an FAQ document or something.
yeah, something.
And how long is this gonna take?
I think about a quarter, so I think, you know, 3 months, 4 months tops. It's not, again, it's pretty hyper focused.
Let's see. 3 months is section.
Yeah.
So, because I was wondering, I was even the age 6 months.
Yeah, no, when we initially asked, they try, you know, we wanna do as best we can and inform the community, but since we're talking about, you know, 30 properties here, you know, trying to really hyper focus on what planning efforts need to look like in that area. It shouldn't take too long.
Will the Chamber of Commerce be a part of discussions?
Yeah, everybody, especially, and what's the other, the Economic Vitality Commission, they will certainly be involved as well. And hopefully all boards and commissions, you know, just like the comprehensive plan.
Okay, any other clarifying questions before we vote on the recommendation to, or on the motion to recommend with, the map amendment? No? All right, if you look down to your right, you have a little toggle switch. To the right is yes, to the left is no. Go ahead and put in your vote. And through the advanced computerized technology of this lectern, we'll see the votes. Oh, it passes unanimously. Okay. Thanks for that, Andrew. There was a lot of explanation and I think it was well suited, kind of cool, kind of exciting, kind of scary. See, we're on item 8, PCBC direction to staff for DOLA training.
Yeah, so I had mentioned this and I didn't want to push you all to make a decision at the last meeting. So I contacted Dr. Cog, and they have contacted DOLA, and we found some funding to have another DOLA training. So, you know, we'll receive kind of the boilerplate planning 101. But then I'd also asked if there were any other kind of issues that you all that are pressing for the town that seem unique, or if you have any kind of direct questions to DOLA, you know, to bring those. If not, you know, we'll just follow their kind of regular training. But we have a few new commissioners and it's been a while since we've had a training, so so I just felt like a good time to do one. So
Just curious, show of hands, who was at the last 1-hour DOLA training that we had? Okay. It was really worthwhile. I wouldn't mind
Yeah,
doing it
I wouldn't
again.
mind
If you guys
either.
mind. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we could have a little bit of concentration in, ADU and SDR best practices. That'll be and, affordable housing.
Yeah.
Best practices.
well, that's gonna be a long meeting, but I'm kidding.
Funding opportunities.
That's right.
Yeah, to that point, you know, and we've got our affordable housing and economic development priorities in the comp plan, you know, DOLA expert knowing that, what should we be thinking about from land use policy context to, you know, support the town in 23 or
Sure.
whatever else out there.
In case anyone wants to know, Denver Post is starting a 4-part series on.
Can we build our way out of the crisis?
Yeah, they have a 4-part series. ADUs was, I think, it's yesterday. I don't know if they have even today, if it's once a week or I'm not sure what's going, but. Everybody wants to know this.
I'm sorry, Debbie.
Yeah, you're sorry, you're.
Would it be appropriate to ask DOLA to opine or share any kind of things that they're seeing around other towns dealing with water shares or water rights? It's
Great
one
idea.
that we don't seem to have at least I could say, I'll speak for myself, I don't seem to have a good grasp on
Sure.
the problems around it. But those two things alone could be like a week-long conference.
We just all go Cheyenne at the Western Planner Conference.
Yeah, okay. Cheyenne, yeah.
It'll be in August. It'll be fun. I have 4 sessions if you want to come hear me talk about affordable housing. Nothing that you're not here.
I like this topic. I think in previous years, our budget had included sending a member or two from the commission to go to a conference, a DOLA conference. Is that still in there? You know,
I will have to check.
Any conference or particular conference, yeah, because
it's related to planning commission stuff, yeah.
yeah, I don't understand the budget, I just wasn't sure.
The monster truck conference or something.
Anyway. Nice.
Transportation planning.
I don't think it was stipulated, to be honest. I think it was. No, could be any of them that you're interested in, but we didn't utilize it if I recall, so it would be nice. We might have sent somebody to Barney, and you and David go to like a water conservancy.
Yeah, thank you.
But that was free. We didn't have to pay for that too. So. Yeah, it could be anything related to what we do. Okay.
By the way, in a private consulting world, people like these conferences and kind of vacation paid for, just saying. You didn't hear me say it,
Good.
or maybe you did.
Any other thing on direction to staff for DOLA training? No. All right. Maybe the last agenda item before adjourning is our PUD amendment. Andrew, would you take it away?
Of course.
So we'll do the same thing as last time. Andrew will present staff. We can ask clarifying questions, and then we'll motion to debate if we need to debate.
All right, let me share my screen. The correct one, maybe. We'll see. Where? All right, so you all have this in front of you, but for, well, we have a guest. There's also one for public review here as well. So, you know, kind of, first and foremost, this doesn't look like code, I understand, but there's no use in putting hierarchy in any code until we've moved things around and added things. It just is a headache, to move this C and make sure everything aligns. So this is the language. Just imagine that it has one A, you know, a hierarchy, and then that'll be added, you know, once we kind of button it up. But, as stated at the last meeting, right now, we have 3 or 4 property owners within the community that are going through some level of a PUD amendment process, from what I would say are major PUDs or major amendments to very minor amendments. And unfortunately, and this is where I got direction last time, as a consultant that rewrote codes, if something was blatantly missing, it was often blatantly missing because the community didn't want to do it. But that did not seem like the case. We, for some reason, just have missed drafting and adopting PUD code amendment language. So what you all have in front of you is a mechanism in which a property owner that has a current PUD can, with some ease, instead of going through a full PUD process, which is what they have to go through now, it allows a property owner the opportunity to simply amend a PUD. And the big difference here, what you'll see, and we'll go over the submittal requirements because those are a bit important, but the submittal requirements are far more narrow and kind of subject specific to what the applicant is actually asking for. You know, if soil's not being touched, then we don't need a soils report. We don't need geohazard work. We don't need all this stuff. It's just extra cost that, you know, applicants, property owners are just having to pay for really no reason. And right now we have the authority to waive these things, but it should just be kind of more, you know, focused on what we're looking at. So right now I have it as a major PUD amendment, and these are much like, you know, a full-on new PUD, but again, we don't have the submittal requirements, as heavy of submittal requirements is currently in the code, but these would still go through a referral process, a neighbor notice process, and would come through this board and would go ultimately in front of the Board of Trustees. And you will see I wrote, because I did not have a referral or a neighborhood notice process for major, but I will add that in as part of that requirement. Sorry, I just got that today. So at least in looking at other codes around smaller towns around Colorado, these are kind of the 7 qualifiers for a major PUD amendment. It modifies the density established by the PUD, modifies the commercial or industrial floor area, modifies a use established by the PUD, modifies the approved phasing plan, significantly alters the allocation and or arrangement of open space or environmentally sensitive areas, significantly alters the approved architectural concept of the PUD, or significantly alters the layout of the approved project infrastructure. And then the difference between a minor is just simply minor PUD amendments shall be determined by the town administrator or designee and include any modification or amendment to an approved PUD that does not constitute a major PUD amendment. So if we have a PUD for, you know, commercial use and the uses are stated as being able to have retail, a restaurant, and that's it. And they want to come in and they want to add indoor farmer's market or something. You know, that would be probably a minor, amendment. There's always, and you had mentioned this, Commissioner Drysdale, there's always an appeals process to each of our requirements. So if a neighbor was unhappy about an administrative decision, it would instantly get kicked up in the process. So that's a real difference in this process. Is a minor is, you know, a fairly focused, small tweak to establish PUD, and the town administrator and or his designee can make that decision administratively, or a major PUD, which goes through a process. As far as the submittal requirements, and they're pretty much the same for both. A general land use application, that's just for our record keeping. This is where things kind of are different. Instead of doing full title work and having full title commitments, most codes that I've worked with, most codes that I've written, they only require an ownership and encumbrance report. So that just tells you, you know, who owns the property and what encumbrances exist. For our purposes, we cover our legal basis, and we're fine, at least in my opinion. Current survey of the property, including all boundary lines, natural features, structures, and infrastructure, a written narrative of what they're wanting, which is amazing because that often is something that's not provided. And planners have to write these things themselves, and it's very difficult to know what's in people's heads. A red line version of the previous PUD. That's what hopefully is beautiful about this process is I can say here is sheet 6A from the approved PUD. This sentence, and this sentence are being altered. This is what we're discussing. A written narrative of description of how these amendments comply with the standards of the municipal code. A PUD, a development plan, if it's been amended, a PUD development agreement, again, if it's been amended, proof of minimum guarantee of water and sewer, just in case, you know, especially for major amendments, if we're expanding square footage or adding, you know, a bedroom or something. And then additional requirements, that's boilerplate. So anything else staff needs or thinks you all will need or you all ask for, we can ask of that. As far as the review procedure, we have a pre-application meeting with staff. Staff does a completeness review of an application that's being submitted, that we have 10 days to do so. We review, the staff reviews the amendment and then sends it out to review agencies through our referral process. Then like always, I draft a staff report, you all review it, and you have your meeting, and we go through the approval criteria. And then it's the same process as most other applications. You pass up a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. As far as the approval criteria go, the major PUD amendment is consistent with the efficient development and preservation of the entire PUD. The major PUD amendment is consistent with the applicable portions of the master plan and the reasonable judgment of the approver. The major PUD amendment does not affect in a substantially adverse manner either the enjoyment and land abutting upon or across the street from the PUD. And the major PUD amendment protects the public interest. So that's, again, there's no need for this process to be very long and dragged out, but that's as minimum, I think, as we can be responsibly to cover our bases. And then going into minor PUD, again, it just goes to staff. I would like to get your all's opinion on for minor, if you would still like to see referrals and neighbor notices. I would say no, but just so we don't open up any, you know, if somebody's adding 10 square feet, there's no need to get neighbors involved. At least that's my opinion. I enjoy neighborhood dialogue, but sometimes the fear of the unknown is much worse than the actual known, and it takes a lot longer to get to the known. But again, review procedures are exactly the same, except for the review and action is by the town administrator or designee, and then the approval criteria are exactly the same. It's just minor instead of major. And that's it in a nutshell. Where you see the red X's are just where section headings will go to refer those back. But again, I always just wait till the end to add those. And that's the end of that. If you have any questions, just let me know.
All right, questions for staff clarification?
I do.
Commissioner Net.
Thanks. So I'm looking at a side by side of submittal requirements, just quickly glancing. It looks like the real differences in the major PUD amendment, a survey would be needed.
Yep.
And also the neighborhood referral process, which you'll put in.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the requirements are exactly the same for the minor.
Yep.
Okay. And then when you get to the submittal requirements, I wondered if the general land use application should be, if changing land use from the original PUD application which was approved. Like, if you're not changing the land use, would you need to resubmit the application?
So the general land use application, that's our way to build a file.
Okay.
So we have that for every, whether it's an SD, we have that for every application that comes through the planning department. And that just establishes the file. So regardless of if they're just adding an or where it said and, we would still like that. So we have that to build a file on.
And then same question for proof of minimum guaranteed water and sewer supply, if applicable, like if you're making a change that doesn't affect water, would you need to re-guarantee that?
I'll leave it up to you all. I still think they should make a statement that says that they don't need it. But that's up to you all, just because water is, I don't want, yeah, I mean, that's fully up to your discussion. It's easy to put if applicable.
Or just what you said, maybe, well, proof of minimum guaranteed water and sewer supply, or if there's no changes would affect that, then that's some kind of statement instead of not applicable.
Yeah, so at least how, in my mind, how that process would look is we have a pre-application conference and then we meet and the applicant's like, well, this is not gonna have any effect on water and sewer. Then that's something that administratively we could waive that at that point, and then that would be in the file that we've waived it. But if we need to add the if applicable, that's just fine. I just don't want it to be directly up to an applicant to say that it's not applicable before submittal or even a pre-application.
Yeah.
That's just one man's opinion, so.
Both the major and minor, the heading does say that the town administrator or designee may waive or alter any of the submittal requirements. So, it gives you pretty much a lot of latitude being able to manage it to the simplest level.
Yeah.
That's still, sort of good.
Yeah, and I mean, I could see, this happens all the time as you get a PUD and you start building and you notice something's different and you're only 3 months down the road. Then a lot of this, hopefully we wouldn't have to have even an O&E report or any of this. So I think that line does hopefully mitigate some of that burden to the applicant, but that is completely up to you all.
And in a major review, like the PCDC could basically ask for things that were waived initially by the administrator, right? So
That's correct.
as commission, we were worried about it.
Yeah, so there's under 5B, there's the Planning and Community Development Commission may, in its sole discretion, continue or postpone the public hearing to a specified date and time, permit the preparation of additional information for further reviews.
Got it.
It's all in there. So if you don't agree with me, that is just fine.
And then the difference between the review procedures for major and minor, like you said, I think if I'm understanding correctly, for major, you do have the PCDC involved and the Board of Trustees involved. For minor, you do not.
That's correct. For minor, it just stays at staff level.
And so the difference in timing for each process?
I mean, difference in timing, for staff, we have 10 days to deem a packet complete. But if it's straightforward, it could be very quick. I mean, we lost Alex. I'm a one-man department, but if it's an easy, Alex is no longer. So. About 2 weeks ago. Sorry, I guess I should have sent something out, but. I think he might, I think he might go, I don't know if I can do that, so.
Yeah, let's not do that during the. Quick question, so on the, what are we gonna call them, criteria, I suppose, for major, for the first 7 bullet points. Just a few things, like when it says modifies the density established, is it important that we specify that that's like unit density or development density? Cause it doesn't say square footage or unit, or, I don't care, I just don't know if it's important that we should clarify.
Question.
I mean, cause if it's any density, that could just be adding a square foot, but
Unit.
I think it's unit, but I don't know what the intention of that is. And then you write code, right? You've done a lot of it. I have not written code. I've read a lot of code and tried to understand it.
Sure.
I find it difficult when there's something like significantly alters without a definition of a threshold. So for instance, you know, the one that's the hardest is significantly alters the, you know, approved architectural concept. It's like, yeah, I guess it's there so a town staff can say, whoa, that's way different than what we thought it was gonna be. And I like that that's in there, but it's also kind of hard to prove that you are or not significantly altering something. And I don't know if it needs to be changed. I just bring it up for wondering if you had thought on it or if there was.
Yeah, no, I don't, to be honest, I don't really like that language either. It's just having that flexibility to push it beyond an administrative approval, I think is important, but you know, that's.
We can leave it in there. But those are kind of squishy.
And I don't know what quantifiable, you know, measure we can put, you know, if you're changing
No idea.
yeah.
I wonder if it should be there, but you know, that's fine too.
I mean, I've seen examples like with tax credits, if you demolish 25% of the walls in the building, you've demolished the building,
Yeah,
but it has to be 25% of the walls.
Historic preservation, same thing.
There's a very specific number, which is
Yeah.
kind of nice.
But then you also see a house, like historic preservation, you'll see a house that has like just the street facing facade, like 2/3 of it remaining and then everything's gone.
sure.
And then it's a remodel. Sorry, Commissioner Karen.
Similarly, number 2, you know, modifies the commercial or industrial floor area. Like, does that mean, you know, by a certain percent? Is that what you're looking for? Again, it's just like if it's 1 foot bigger or smaller, does that? So something clear there.
Yes, this would be, if you're changing the commercial or industrial footprint, it kicks it to a major, but that is a good point, that if it's, but why are you gonna go through a process if you only need, I don't know.
I mean, we don't have building, footprint code rules, at least not in the residential code.
Sure.
So it's, you know, is that, I don't know, is that adding a walk-in, you know, freezer behind the market and then all of a sudden we're in a major review?
So,
They're tricky. I don't know. I mean, again, if you say, hey guys, stop being silly, this is just.
no, that's, I mean, if we wanna say, you know, it just, it can be scaled very differently. So if we put, you know, 5 or 10%, which sounds very small on a large building, you know, for a building downtown that's already almost 0 lot line, it's significant, you know, so it's, I don't like ambiguity either, but you know, if it's down on the Eastern Corridor and you wanna add, you know, 3,000 square feet behind a 10,000 square foot building, whatever, you know.
I think modifying the use, modifying the approved phasing plan, those make sense.
Sure.
But modifying, actually, even the phasing plan, so maybe everything but use should say significantly modifies and give staff
Okay,
the brevity to review it.
everything but use.
But just throwing that out there as a way to address that ambiguity.
To add significantly to everything.
Everything except for the use established. Barney has his hand up nicely.
Yeah, the review the information request for review and the review process both have that ability to waive or you know, adjust it to some degree to make it reasonable and easy. The criteria, I think, are a little different. I think criteria have to be fairly clear and specific to the degree possible. And you're probably gonna run into a situation in which they don't apply, but they are.
Sure.
And so, I was thinking we may want to add something like criteria may be added, removed, or modified by a resolution of the Board of Trustees. So make it a bump, make it something that has to happen in order for the criteria to be adjusted, but there is a way to do it. In a relatively easy way, if resolution doesn't have to go through, 3 months of sitting on the agenda, that sort of thing.
So you're saying if one of these 4 approval criteria can't be met?
Well, yeah, actually, I was thinking, what is it, number 8 or whatever, talks about approval criteria, just add that phrase, criteria maybe.
Yeah, so I'd have to get with Brandon if you have
it's a
adopted
Brandon question.
criteria, but to mitigate that concern, instead of criteria, you can have considerations. And so that way, if,
No, I think when you're trying to get between, major and minor,
yeah,
that, to me, there ought to be criteria that you can rely on and.
criteria to choose between major and minor.
Right.
Okay,
That's the first 7 bullet points on the document, right? Where you saying there should be more criteria before those.
No additional criteria. It's just that the Board of Trustees could modify the criteria if you're up against a situation where
I see.
something, wait a minute, it falls into the minor category perfectly, but we want it to be major, or it is, it falls into the major category, but come on, it's really minor. And so if the word, a little more than a text amendment, so that the Board of Trustees has, and they always do, but it's, to me, it would be okay to put it in the document that the Board of Trustees could adjust criteria relatively easily, so you don't have to wait 3 or 4 months to go through the first reading, or get it on the agenda, then go through the first reading, then go through the second reading to get approval.
The problem though, that I think these aren't criteria that are restrictive. Are you saying that someone could take to the Board of Trustees to make them restrictive for a particular applicant if we wanted to?
Yeah. Or just that the way the criteria is stated complicates someone's ability to file it as minor as opposed to major, or vice versa. The town staff is saying, they're trying to make it minor, but it really is major. So, we need to clarify the criteria. So, can't be ex post facto, but so as you learn how these things work, that there's a fairly simple mechanism to make it as workable as possible for the team.
So if this is written, is there only criteria for a major PUD amendment? The assumption is that they don't meet these criteria, then they are therefore a minor.
Yeah.
So basically in that one sentence in the major PUD amendment that says, shall be determined by the town administrator designee, include amendment, blah, blah, blah. There's in there somewhere about the following criteria may be altered by a resolution of the Board of Trustees.
Right.
Would be more specific or be binding.
And actually, Brandon would be the best one to figure out how to put that in. And it may not even be absolutely necessary, but it just occurred to me that criteria really should be respected and included.
Yeah, I guess sometimes we were like, hey, we don't know. Could you ask Brandon? Maybe that's one of those. But I think Barney has a good point. I don't know for you how to do it.
so you're looking for, if someone comes in and it truly is minor, but it's kicked into the major because of one of these criteria,
Right.
you're looking for, an avenue that the Board of Trustees can take to say, no, we're gonna disagree, we're gonna kick it down, to a minor. And then on the other side, which again, this is just leaning on staff, but somebody's pushing very hard that it's a minor amendment, that's actually a major, you know, I feel just comfortable saying, no, it's a major, we're gonna follow this, and then they can appeal it if they want, you know, that an applicant can always appeal, you know, any decision that I make or any, you know, Victoria makes.
Does it say that in this part of the code, or is that a blanket somewhere else?
That's blanket. You always have the, you know, government 101, you always have any written determination from a staff planner or, you know, any person enforcing a zoning code. This commission or the board of trustees can always be, amended.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to mention it in text.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So just,
And then there was, you know, I'm sorry, somewhere in the review procedures for minor, there was and I can't find it right now, but, a reference to public hearing. My impression
Oh,
was
in the
that
minor,
there would not be a public hearing.
that might have just been a mess up. Let's see.
I think it's in 4B. It's just, yeah, just to strike it, no big deal.
Oh, yeah, there's no, yeah, you were right.
And then, you know, as soon as we can, to me, this isn't quite ready for us to have a final
Sure.
ruling, right? And so, when we do, it would be helpful to know what the, references to the municipal code actually are.
Okay.
Specifically, so that when we vote on it, we have a chance ahead of time to go and look, because going through the municipal code is a learning experience.
Sure.
Every time.
yeah, so just to wrap up that first 7 criteria for whether it's a major or a minor. It seems like the only one of those that if there's any modification whatsoever is number 3, if it's a change to use. And then it seems like all the other 6 need to just say significantly alters to kind of stay in line and be consistent. And then staff, we trust staff to say that any change to a unit density, or any change to square footage of commercial industrial floor area is significant enough that it would garner a major or minor. And I think I'm comfortable with that. I don't know if that I speak for all of us saying that, but that would make sense.
Okay.
So I'm sure we have other things to discuss before we get going too far. It sounds like we're kind of maybe moving to a second draft of this before we recommend. Is that okay with your timeline and stuff?
I have no timeline.
Okay.
I mean, I would like to get it
Get over it.
done. So, yeah, that's fine. I can bring it on the 13th. We'll have all of these notes. I would hope, you know, at that meeting, everything's buttoned up, then we can have a
Be quick.
recommendation. That's gonna be a busy meeting, because we're also gonna have, a new PUD, but I would like to get this done as well.
Yeah, we could probably get to a pre-read too, and please, Commissioner Schwartz.
Yeah, and we also, that'll be our only meeting in May, because the 27th is Memorial Day. But just bringing that to our attention.
We could meet the next day.
Yeah,
Yeah, we haven't scheduled. So
And that's.
is that already scheduled?
Do we have a,
Good.
oh, it's only calendar to be the day after Memorial?
Yeah, I mean, if a holiday comes on a Monday,
we just meet on the Tuesday.
we frequently met on a Tuesday.
Okay.
All right, let's circle back to that here in a second.
Yeah.
Commissioner Krantz, please.
Where is it addressed if changes happen before this review process occurs? And Lee's situation actually made me think of that. So, you know, if somebody has a PUD, they make a change that varies from the plan and then request approval for, like, how is that addressed?
Yeah, so, yeah, it's a problem, when a PUD isn't followed, you know, I don't want to get specific in certain details, but, you know, you try to handle it through maybe a variance, but you can't do that because it's self-imposed. So you do have to change the PUD and you have to amend it. You know, depending on what type of issue it is, it might be a zoning enforcement issue, it might be a code enforcement issue. You know,
How do we incentivize, or I don't know, this is a situation that I can imagine, you know. I can imagine why that would have
I can
happened.
help you imagine. Yeah,
Yeah, please, yeah.
so in our case, I apologize for having violated the PUD. Our general contractor intended to put the structures, for example, exactly as they were in the PUD on the drawings, but he made a mistake. And we caught it at the end when we surveyed to look at the exact locations and elevations of every element of the project. So we were, after the fact, trying to fix something. Some of the fixes may require taking things out and putting them back in. Some of the fixes may require, like the two that I mentioned, working with staff or with commissions to find a way to approve what we did by accident. The discussion that we've had with Aaron is that we may, if we believe that this could ultimately be resolved and papered over with approvals that people were comfortable with, we may move forward knowing that we have a violation. And as Andrew said, in some cases it might be a zoning violation, in some cases it might be a code violation, but we might for a little while live with the risk of having a violation while we work with everyone to try to mop it up.
Mhm.
Because as it stands, without an amendment process that's been approved, it would, any amendment to the one number and the one word would have to go through the full PUD review process, which can take however long it takes.
Right, if the commission chose not to pursue this ever, then at some point, we would work with Andrew and Aaron and the team to submit a new PUD application. But if the commission and the trustees choose to put this mechanism in place, we will, as soon as possible, take advantage of it.
Yeah, here it was just, kind of how it happened and not intentional at all. Thank you for explaining. I think in other circumstances, it could be that someone would be asking for forgiveness rather than permission. Here, that's not the case here. And so I was just wondering, you know, is this the place where that gets addressed? And how do we incentivize the permission rather than the forgiveness?
yeah, so I mean, it truly isn't. It's not often that these types of things happen.
Okay.
You know, mistakes happen and that's fine. I've worked for a municipality that they had to move the house, you know, it was a long process, you know. I remember I worked for the town of Highlands. They're very serious about their zoning code. There's a chimney and it was a very, very expensive chimney. And I mean, you could almost park it both ways. It's a huge house, but at any rate, it was like 13 inches into the front setback and the whole chimney had to go. So it's a big deal. That, yeah, that doesn't happen very often. And I think the town alliance is much more willing to try to work with applicants. But yeah, if it's a blatant, I did this knowing, you know, that I was wrong and now I'm coming back after the fact, then maybe that's, well, I can't, as staff, I can't make this decision. I'm gonna push it to the board of trustees, you know, and
So there's a process built in is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing, and it's very rare.
yeah, I mean, there are many, I truly, I don't think this was a malicious attempt to get around a PUD. You know, it's more of a headache and it didn't really gain anything, in my opinion. So it's, you know, if it's somebody building an extra house, then yes, you know, that's obviously an issue.
It's
But
taken care of is what I hear.
Yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
I would just like for your case, like, for his case fall under like what you're saying is 10 square feet, your neighbor probably would never notice. Is it probably more like that situation where they probably wouldn't even notice the foot difference or?
So, yeah, I think it's an important thing
I mean, yeah,
to review and make sure that everyone is comfortable with. But I would be surprised if any neighbor or any referring agency, for example, cared about this issue. The setback that I'm talking about in the rear sets back to the alley, which sets back to the Dr. Bot property, which sets back to town property, which sets back to Bone Park. You have to go 1,000 feet before you ever get to another building. I don't think people will care.
It's in the alley too.
So the PUD is a zone overlay, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
Right, so if there was something developed in a zoning that was out of compliance with the zoning, it would be up to town to enforce that by finding the owner,
that's correct.
which the town probably not gonna do. I won't speak for the town, but
Yeah.
I'm just guessing, thinking out loud. So the timing of this, it's an enforcement issue. It's not like a certificate of occupancy issue. It's not affecting a particular project's timeline per se.
I mean, I don't know.
We don't have.
You know,
So with a development that is in process, it certainly could be a CO issue, you know, clearing up. If there are units that are in compliance and the town can work with an applicant to get, you know, a temporary or partial CO, I think that's up to the town's discretion to try to work with an applicant, especially, you know, it's always project by project, but we have to be fair to everyone. But yeah, I think, you know, if it's outright zoning violation, you know, then we have to chase it. But if it's a setback issue, which is technically a zoning violation, but for a residential property, you know, single owner or whatever, we try to work with.
So typically, the Board of Adjustments wouldn't deal with PUD matters.
That's correct.
Could there be a modification to the charter for the Board of Adjustments to enable it to make minor adjustments within a PUD, to approve minor adjustments in a PUD? That's probably a branding question. I've just occurred to me that there may be an even more direct.
Yeah, I think that process would be a bit too partnered with what looks like a variance, and that I'll let Brandon decide, but the process of going administrative or through the planning commission and board of trustees, you know, I think it's just fine. But, and I guess the Board of Adjustment is the Board of Trustees anyways within the, I thought.
No,
No, it's a separate
Okay.
commission.
So can we kind of pull it back to the code here, just,
Yeah,
or is there anything else you want to kind of share for? It's great having an example of a current project that this
Sure.
would affect, because that really gives it some light and some, you know, personality behind the code, which we don't always get.
sure.
Just one thing, number 7, approval criteria.
Mhm.
B talks about the master plan. I assume that's a comprehensive plan.
Yeah,
I don't know if we already caught that or not. And then I'm curious about C. Because it says the amendment does not affect in a substantially adverse manner either the enjoyment of land abutting upon or across the street from the PUD, which seems kind of far reaching for the PCDC to what opinion on. And it seems like the comprehensive plan would probably cover that anyway. So I'm just curious if there's a specific reason why C is in there.
well, you know, live music, you know, adding a dog park. I mean, there's,
Don't say
Yeah.
dog park. How dare you?
you know, I mean, this is lines. I don't know, but you know, just things like that could turn into a nuisance issue down the road. It's, I guess I see it's better to try to address that and have a formal
I guess,
decision on it early on, but if that's,
well, to Barney's point about criteria being, you know, specific and important and measurable, C and D seem redundant to B. Unless there's specific reasons why C and D should have their own space, and I
sure,
just wanted your opinion on it. But if you think it's important enough that C should be thought of as, you know, a separate thing than B and also for D, then that's fine.
I have no opinion, so that,
Well, can something be inconsistent with the master plan and also not protect public interest? I guess.
inconsistent and not protect?
Well, can it be consistent with the comp plan and then not protect public interest?
Yeah, I'm sure you could find a use on a piece of property that you could find that was consistent with the comprehensive plan, but would get considerable pushback from having an adverse effect on someone's enjoyment of their
Okay.
land.
Well, let's leave them in there then, because you wrote it, you have a good feeling about it, I trust you. All right, any other things that need to be discussed around the PUD language before we do a quick reading 2 weeks from now? To recommend,
I think it's 3 weeks, but
Yeah, 'cause
3 weeks.
oh, yeah.
got an extra Monday.
unless you want to have a special meeting.
No, we don't do that. No dog parks and special meetings.
All
So
right.
the police amendment could be, an amendment process could be approved would be 5 weeks, 6 weeks from now.
We recommend to the board of trustees, will do what with it?
Schedule 2 readings?
So a month after,
Yeah.
So about 2 months from now.
if you're lucky.
Mhm.
Cause the project we're working on.
Hey, and it's not our job to necessarily take one application into account. I think that's nice that we do, because it gives, again, a voice and a personality to the code, but we need to do right by the code.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear, this is not the only example.
Right.
You know, we have 4 other PUDs that are seeking, you know, amendments. So it's just a hole that we have.
Just to that point, is that just a coincidence that there are 4? Because am I confused? We kind of said earlier that this doesn't happen a lot, so,
A PUD modification.
or did I misunderstand?
The modification, I guess what doesn't occur very often is we're going back to amend a PUD from an error or something that was done incorrectly. I think you see PUD amendments probably quite often, you know, for something
They're
that you
asking
want.
for permission.
That's correct.
Most, they just probably have like a minor modification application that's like a
Okay.
blanket for all this kind of stuff. Everything from,
For PUDs, it normally needs to run, since
specific
it's,
thing.
since it's zone specific, it needs to run just like a text or a map amendment.
so to put a pin in this agenda item number 9, do we need to have a motion not to recommend and to have a second reading? Nope, okay.
You can continue it.
We'll continue it. Okay, great. We usually have a thing for like any extra, any extras, but
Yeah, sorry.
seems like we beat it up. Is there any other things that need to be addressed before we adjourn our meeting? No? Okay, with that in mind, I'll take a motion. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Meeting? Yeah, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A second?
Okay, drawing a little buttons, all in favor. It is unanimous, we may adjourn.
It's open for one person that wanted to step.
Oh, and clarification on the way the agenda is structured. It seems like in the past, we've done kind of our public stuff up front, and then we finish everything else with workshops, so like all the staff report, breakfast,